Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, why did I explain everything so clearly, talk so much, and they still said, let me think about it? You ask for a raise and you get vague promises that go nowhere. You try to close a deal and they start comparing you to someone else. You ask a friend to lend you a little money and you get silence. Here is the uncomfortable truth. In negotiation, the more you talk, the weaker you often sound. The winner is usually the person who controls the pace, asks the right questions, and knows when to stay quiet. If you want them to say yes faster, you need a different lens. Negotiation is not a contest of who speaks better. Negotiation is a game about decision authority, trust, and locking in commitment at the right moment. When you control those three things, you do not need to argue. You need a few well-placed lines. Then you let the structure do the work. The first tip is to talk less by finding the right person who can actually say yes. A lot of people fail because they are persuading the wrong person. You bring a stack of reasons to someone who is just an employee, and they nod enthusiastically. But the moment they walk into their manager's office, your story turns into a neutral report. Someone wants to propose this. Here are a few pros and cons. The boss can decide whatever. An employee is not fighting for your agreement. They are fighting for their safety, for their bonus, for not upsetting the person at the top. If you want a faster yes, you have to shorten the path to the decision. The simplest move is to ask directly and ask early. Who is the final decision maker? And can I speak with them directly for 10 minutes to finalize the terms? Say it calmly and firmly, like you are organizing a process. When you can speak with the person in charge, positive signals from a middleman stop wasting your time. What matters is this. Once you have direct access, you solve the hard parts at the table instead of sending messages back and forth. Here is an everyday example. You want to swap a work shift, but you tell your shift lead, and they just nod to end the conversation. Find the person who actually approves the schedule. Say 2 sentences. This is who I can swap with, and the schedule will not hurt revenue. 10 minutes later, you get a clear answer. Bring this into real life. If you want a raise, identify who approves the budget, then ask for a short meeting with that exact person. If you want to close a service contract, do not just message procurement and hope they communicate it correctly. Ask for a call with the person accountable for results, because they understand the value you bring. If you want to negotiate rent, do not only talk to the building manager. Ask them to connect you directly with the property owner, or at least request written confirmation from the owner. In most cases, just speaking to the right person cuts negotiation time in half. The second tip is to build credibility so your words carry more weight than your wording. There are negotiations where someone asks a few questions and then agrees. Not because they are easy, because they already believe you can deliver. Credibility is compound interest. You build it every day. Then you use it to negotiate faster with fewer words. You do not need to be famous to have credibility. You need clear, consistent proof. If you are an employee, credibility looks like delivering on time, with few mistakes, and staying steady when something goes wrong. If you run a small business, credibility looks like real reviews, transparent return policies, and on-time delivery. If you are a freelancer, credibility looks like a clean portfolio page, specific outcomes, and 2 testimonials from real named clients. When you sit down at the table, you do not talk in long paragraphs. You state one fact, then you stop. You let them do the math. Choosing you reduces risk. It is not them doing you a favor. Then you connect your ask to what they fear most. Most decision makers fear risk more than they love profit. They fear missed deadlines. They fear surprise costs. They fear their boss asking, "Why did you pick this person?" When you understand that fear, you only need one sentence. I commit to this timeline, and if I am late, I will take responsibility under our agreement. Then stop talking. They will start asking for details. And you answer the questions they ask, not the worries in your own head. The third tip is to lock the deal with a simple confirmation before it gets stolen. A lot of opportunities die, not because the terms are bad, but because of hesitation. You meet a car seller, you are basically aligned, and then you go home to think about it. The next day, the car is sold to someone else. You talk with a potential client. They are interested, but you do not lock in the next step. A faster competitor takes them. In situations like that, you do not need more verbal promises. You need a minimum commitment as fast as possible. In sensitive deals, people often use a very short written note to lock in intent, so neither side changes their mind while the formal paperwork is being prepared. The key detail is this. You have to spot the escape hatch they try to build in, then remove it early. For example, they add a clause like, pending someone's approval so they can walk away. The move is to say it directly. That clause removes the point of finalizing today, so we should remove it. If they truly want to move forward, they will agree. In everyday life, you do not need complicated paperwork. You can use a short confirmation text message or a concise email. I am confirming that we agree on the price, the delivery timeline, and the payment method we discussed. I will send the formal contract tomorrow. If anything changes, we will confirm the change in writing. A message like that is enough for the other person to understand. This is a serious agreement, and you operate with discipline. If this is hitting the exact situations you are dealing with, subscribe to the channel. You do not need to study negotiation like it is philosophy. You need a few right principles, practiced enough that they become automatic. And the next 3 tips are the part that makes them say yes faster while you barely say anything. Pacing, silence at the right moment, and how to turn their hesitation into a commitment they say out loud themselves. Rhythm is the first thing you have to take back. If you let the other person set the pace, they will make you explain, make you prove things, and then drag you into a conversation with no finish line. The longer you talk, the more material you hand them to argue against you. A strong negotiator does not talk more. They speak at the right moment, with the right sentence, and then they stop. The 4th tip is to use silence like a hammer. You say one important line, and then you go quiet. No apologies, no damage control, no extra reasons. Silence makes your words heavier, and it forces the other person to respond. In everyday life, most of us fear empty space. So right after we make an offer, we rush to fill the gap with explanations. And that explanation is exactly what weakens you. Remember a very practical rule. Any sentence you want someone to think about, you say it once, and then you stop. Any sentence you want someone to agree to, you let them say part of it themselves. For example, asking for a raise. You walk into the room and open clean and simple. In the past 6 months, I delivered 3 specific results, and I want to adjust my salary to this level starting next month. Then you stop. You look straight ahead, calm. You do not add something like, if it is hard for you, we can wait until next quarter. That moment will feel uncomfortable, but it is the key. Your manager will have to do one of 3 things. Say yes, give a reason to say no, or propose an alternative. No matter what they say, you have pulled the conversation back to the real point. If they stay silent too, you do not need a long speech. You only need one short question to unlock it. What is keeping you from agreeing right now? Then you go quiet again. You are forcing them to name the real barrier, instead of hiding behind something vague like, let me review it. Another example, buying something expensive like a phone or a used motorbike. The seller says the price. You do not argue, you just say, that is a bit high for my budget. Then you stop. Most sellers will lower the price on their own, or throw in something extra, or ask what number you want. If you immediately add more, like, I saw it cheaper elsewhere, or it has scratches, or this and that, you open the door for them to counter every single point. But when you stay quiet, you turn the negotiation into a question hanging in their mind. How do I close this buyer? Silence is not a cheap mind game. It is a way to respect your own words. You say less, so every sentence has to carry weight. And the less you talk, the more you need to prepare ahead of time. What you want, what you can give up, and what you will never accept. The 5th tip is to create leverage without threatening. Leverage is not yelling, I will walk away. Leverage is having another option, or at least making the other person believe you have another option. When you have only one door, you start shaking. You cut your own price, you give in early, you sign something you do not want, just because you are scared of losing the opportunity. A lot of people think leverage only exists in big deals. That is not true. An employee has leverage if their skills are in demand and they have proof on paper. An online seller has leverage if they have steady orders and repeat customers. A student has leverage if they have a backup plan instead of betting everything on a single scholarship. The key is that you do this before you sit down at the table. You do not create leverage with fancy words. You create it with real choices. Say you are a freelance designer. A client asks, can you lower your price? If you are desperate for work, you will say, fine, I will drop it a bit so you will sign. And from that moment on, they will always squeeze you. But if you have other options, you answer differently. You say, I can adjust the budget, but we need to adjust the scope. I have 2 options. One is we keep the quality we agreed on at this price and deliver on time. 2 is we lower the price, but we cut this part and push the timeline back. Then you stop. You do not argue. You just offer two reasonable doors and let them choose. It works the same in a family. Your child asks for something expensive. You do not need a 30-minute lecture. You say, "We are not buying it the way you want, but we are willing to help you get it in another way." You choose. One is you save this amount each week and we cover part of it. Two is you take on extra chores in exchange for that amount. You are teaching choices and consequences. And more importantly, you are taking back decision power without raising your voice. Leverage also lives in time. People who rush usually lose. When you are in a hurry, you spill information, and you accept worse terms. So before an important negotiation, build yourself time buffer. Do not negotiate at the last minute of a contract. Do not wait until the final day to ask for a raise. Do not trap yourself into choosing between saying yes right now or losing everything. Time buffer is what lets you talk less and still have strength. The sixth tip is to set a big standard, then let the other person adjust. Strong negotiators often start with a high expectation. Not to trick anyone, to shape the frame of the game. Once the frame is set, the numbers that follow tend to orbit that frame. There is a truth most people do not like to admit. Everyone is influenced by the starting point. If you open with a small target, you will get pushed even lower. If you open with a big target and you have a reason, you create room to negotiate while still protecting your value. Here's how to apply it safely for most people. You do not throw out an insane number and hope they get scared and say yes. You state a high goal and you tie it to criteria. For example, asking for a raise, you do not say, "I want a 50% increase because I feel I deserve it." You say, "Based on these results, these responsibilities, and the market range for this role, a fair level is around this." Then you stop. You anchored the number and you anchored the reason. If they want to push back, they have to push back with facts, not just vibes. In a small business, you do the same thing when you quote a price. Do not start with your lowest number and hope to upsell later. Start with your best package, the one that makes the customer see the value. Then you offer a lower option if needed. When you start low, the customer assumes your service is cheap, and they ask for cheaper. When you start high, the customer asks, "Okay, what if I cut this part?" That is the question of someone looking for a way to say yes. And here is a subtle move that strong people use. You create a little excitement by telling the right amount of story, but grounded in truth. No baseless exaggeration, no promises you cannot keep. You highlight the single most special part of your offer, short and clear, and you let their imagination do the rest. In sales, one accurate detail can be stronger than 10 lines of hype. In job interviews, one project with real numbers can beat a whole speech. There is a story worth thinking about. Sometimes success does not come from having enough confidence. It comes from daring to ask for something big. People might be surprised. They might even go silent. But that boldness opens a conversation you would never get if you only asked for something small. But there is one condition you cannot forget. You can speak big, you can set expectations, you can get attention. In the end, you have to deliver exactly what you promised. If you do not, every technique backfires, and next time, they will stop listening. These 3 tips, silence, leverage, and a big standard, will change the other person's attitude. They will stall less. They will test you less. They will start asking, "So what is the next step?" And when they ask that question themselves, you are very close to yes. The final tip is how you close without begging, by turning their decision into a choice they actually want to complete. The final tip is how you turn a vague negotiation into a clear decision, with one question that makes the other person walk themselves into a yes. Most people do not say no because they dislike you. They say no because they are afraid to commit. They are afraid of choosing wrong. They are afraid of losing control. So the more they feel pressured, the more they pull back. If you want them to agree faster, do not ask, "Do you agree?" Ask it like this: "If I solve the exact thing you are hesitating about, can we close?" The 7th tip is to package your offer as a choice that benefits them and make them choose. People hate being forced to answer yes or no, but they like the feeling that they get to choose. It is a small difference, but it completely changes the speed of a negotiation. You do not ask, "So are you buying or not?" You ask, "If we close today, do you want delivery on Thursday or Saturday?" It sounds simple, but it shifts the question from buying or not to buying which way. At that point, their brain starts arranging logistics instead of resisting. If they are still not ready, the real obstacle shows up. And once the real obstacle shows up, you have something real to handle. Use this for asking for a raise. You do not say, "Can you raise my salary?" You say, "If I hit next month's sales target and take on this additional responsibility, do we adjust my pay starting at the beginning of next month or starting mid-month?" That question is powerful because it does two things at once. First, it shows you understand what the company needs. Second, it pulls the conversation toward a commitment date. If your manager does not want to agree yet, they cannot just say, "Let me see." They have to name specific conditions or say directly that there is no budget. If they name conditions, you work those conditions. If they say there is no budget, you pivot to another option, like a project bonus, a level-based increase, or a clear timeline commitment. You are still controlling the pace. In a small business, you use this when a customer keeps asking for more, wants to see more, and keeps comparing. You can say, "I understand you want to feel confident. Let me ask one question to make this clear. If I deliver the exact quality you want, do you want the full package for faster results, or the basic package to save budget?" If they choose, then you continue. If they do not choose, you ask, "What is the one thing keeping you from choosing?" And then you stop talking. That is when people usually tell the truth. They are afraid it will not work. They are afraid of late delivery. They are afraid of unexpected costs. Or they are afraid their spouse or family will object. That is what you need to handle, not more arguing about price. In a family, you can use this to avoid a long fight. A couple is talking about spending. One person wants to save. The other wants a higher quality of life. Do not throw a pile of logic at each other. Turn it into a clear choice. We want to travel. Fine. So do we take a short weekend trip and keep an emergency fund? Or do we take a longer trip but cut back on entertainment this month? When there is a choice, both sides can sit down and work it out. When there is no choice, both sides are just trying to win. But there is one rule that must come with this, or the tactic becomes pressure, and the other person will react. You have to protect their downside first. People say yes faster when they feel they are not getting trapped. So before you offer the choice, you clearly explain how you reduce their risk. If you provide a service, you say, "I will send daily progress updates, and if I miss this milestone, I will refund that portion." If you sell a product, you say, "Check it as much as you want. If it is not as described, I will swap it immediately." If you ask for a raise, you say, "If after 1 month I do not hit this metric, we go back to the old level or we adjust the scope." You are giving them a safety bridge to walk across. Look at a very real situation, negotiating rent. You want a lower price. The landlord hesitates because they are afraid you will pay late or damage the place. You do not talk for 10 minutes. You say, "I want to reduce it to this level because I plan to stay long term. If I set up an automatic transfer on a fixed day every month and sign an agreement to keep the place in good condition, would you prefer a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease?" If the landlord stays quiet, you ask, "What do you need me to guarantee so you feel comfortable?" Then you stop. In most cases, they will say exactly what they are afraid of. You handle that fear, and the price naturally becomes more flexible. This is the point where people say yes faster, and you do not have to talk much. You are not persuading with words. You are persuading with structure. Clear conditions, clear commitments, clear choices. You say one line, then you let the other person step into it. Now connect these 7 moves into a simple habit you can use today. Before any important negotiation, whether it is work, money, or family, ask yourself 3 questions. Who has the decision authority? What alternatives do I have so I am not negotiating from desperation? And what is the one line I will say, then stop, to force the conversation into the core issue? If you do those 3 things, you are already ahead of most people. You will notice something interesting. When you talk less, you stop getting exhausted from forcing things. You stay calmer. You hear more. And when you hear more, you learn what the other person truly wants, what they truly fear, and what they truly need in order to agree. That is real negotiation skill. Not manipulation, not tricks. It is understanding people, understanding incentives, and asking the right question to reach a decision. If you want me to keep making practical, real-world videos like this, ones you can use immediately in work and life, subscribe to the channel. I will share more conversation scripts, more closing questions, and how to handle hard situations, like being pressured on price, getting dragged out, being compared to someone else, or having the other person use the same tactics against you. And next time you walk into a negotiation, remember one thing. You do not need to speak better. You just need to speak more precisely, and stay quiet at the right moment.